All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So I want you to think about this question here because the next activity that I'm going to do is it's going to do two things. It's going to give you practice with calculating your cost, but it's also going to hopefully start this you to think about what cost we really worry about when we are a producer. And I'm going to ask you a question here. So imagine that you own like a water park like with water slides and water rides and a big pool and stuff like that. And in the summer, you saw that you woke up in the morning and you saw that the forecast was kind of overcast and maybe it was going to rain a little bit throughout the day, but not the whole day. And like what would you worry about when it came to deciding whether or not you should open up the park that day? Because you know that you're probably not going to get that many customers, right? You're not going to make a lot of revenue that day. But does that mean that you shouldn't open up? And like there's some costs that you might worry about, and then there's some costs that it doesn't matter, that you shouldn't even think about because these are what we call sunk costs. And a sunk cost is a cost that you can't recover. So if you are a person that owns a water park, like your mortgage for your property would be a sunk cost, right? Whether or not you open on the overcast day doesn't matter. You're going to be paying those mortgage costs regardless. So they shouldn't weigh on your decision. But maybe your like electricity for like running the water pumps, maybe that would because the more you're open, the more you have to pay for those. So you might worry about those costs. So you might compare the cost of your electric bill for the day to the revenue that you could get to make your decision. And so this is going to bring us to this idea of what we call a lump sum versus a per unit tax. Sometimes students are not familiar with the term lump sum. Why am I not? There we go. Look at that. I don't know why I was in that other mode. But a lump sum, sometimes you hear this like with lottery winners. Like, are you going to take it in a lump sum? A lump sum just means this is a one-timer. One-timer. So you pay that tax one time, bam, you're done. We'll get to it in a second, but this sounds like what type of cost here? Might sound like a fixed cost. All right? But a per unit tax, this is a tax that depends, I don't know, I'm not going to write this. It depends on your output, which sounds like what type of cost? Maybe a cost that depends on your output. Maybe a variable cost. And they're going to have different influences on how producers make decisions, okay? And the costs that they face. And so up until now, like on your tax, when we did tax graphs and stuff, it said per unit tax. I don't know if many of you like questioned me about it, and if you did, I probably said something like just trust me on this, in like that way that teachers do, like, oh, we'll get there, but for right now, just kind of play along. And now's the part where we kind of figure out why I was saying that, and why it would say per unit tax. So on your page 37, it's got two graphs here. It's got one or two charts. One that looks like this and one that looks like this. They look virtually identical, but there are slight variations, and you'll see why in just a second. So the top one deals with this lump sum tax, this one-time tax of $10. And the question is how, we just said, hey, this is going to behave like a fixed cost. So it says here that our fixed costs are $6, but that was before the tax. That was like on our old graph. So now, if you notice, 6 plus what gets us our total cost? Wait a second, it's 16 now. Hold on. This was 0 before, right? Because I didn't make any output. So that means that this has got to be 16 now. So you notice that your fixed costs are all going up by that $10 tax. So what I want you to do is, so you know your fixed costs now are all going to be 16. I want you to recalculate your whole chart now with this lump sum tax. All right? Go do that. All right? Go do that. Pause the video. Go do that. And then when you come back, I'm going to talk about the per unit tax. So go finish this one. check with your neighbor once you're done, and then go to the per unit, and we're going to talk about some of the differences. Okay. So now you're coming back. You just did all your calculations for the lump sum tax. But now you've got a per unit tax. And we said at the beginning of this video, this is going to operate like a variable cost because you only pay the tax if you produce more stuff. So this is like buying flour and eggs, right, at your bakery. The more you want to produce, the more you got to spend on those things. Well, the same thing here. The more you produce, the more tax you're going to pay. So if you look at your first line again, well, my variable cost is going to be 0 when I produce 0 units. Okay? All right, I'm down with that. Now, what's my fixed cost going to be here? Well, it's still going to be 6. So if you look, 6 plus what gets me 21? Well, that's 15. All right? And hang on one sec. And if you do me a favor here, take a look at your production cost chart, the first one you did on page 36, the one that we did and you had to graph. If you notice, your line now, before this was 5 and this was 11, your total cost was 11 and your variable cost was 5 instead of 15. Notice that now you've added $10 to your variable cost because for every unit you produce, you pay a $10 tax. So if you look at the second one, this is 6, and this should be 6 and 28 gives me 34, I believe, right? Notice, again, look back to page 36. What was your variable cost at 2 units here? It was only 8. But here you have to pay $10 tax for the first unit and a $10 tax for the second unit. So that's $20 extra that you're shelling out. So you can kind of see how this variable cost is being influenced by your $10. And so again, we'll do one more, and then I'm going to set you free to finish this. 49, right? Again, look at your variable cost for 3 units on page 36. It was 13, but now it's 43. That's because, hey, you had to pay $10 for every unit, for unit 1, unit 2, unit 3. So that's $30 additional that you had to pay in variable cost because of this per unit tax. So I want you to redo your whole chart now and see how it's going to change with your per unit tax. And then I want you to make sure, again, check both charts with a neighbor. Okay. Once you're done with the charts, flip over on the back. There are 5 questions. And I want you to look and compare here. Hang on one sec. I want to make sure I say this right. Yeah, I just wanted to double check and make sure I was saying this right. So there are 5 questions on the back of page 37 that deal with these per unit and lump sum taxes. Have your charts on 36 and 37 facing each other so that you can see on 36 when there's no tax, and then on 37 when we impose the different types of tax, how your charts change. Because that's what you're going to look for, like for questions 1 and 2. So how is the marginal cost influenced by the lump sum tax? You want to compare it to when there was no tax. All right? Same thing for 2. So you're trying to get a sense of how this tax is influencing your different cost curves. And remember, think about utility. When we were thinking about utility, what ultimately determined our decision? It wasn't, we wanted to maximize total utility, but we didn't use total utility to figure that out. We used our marginal values. And if you remember from the way, way, way back machine, one of the basic economics principles is that economists make decisions at the margin. And so marginal costs become really, really important, and are going to start to drive the decision-making process going forward. So look at those 5 questions on the back, all right? And I think I'm going to call this enough for you. You got your homework in the last video. I think I'm going to call this enough. Don't hold me to that. I might make one more. We'll see.